Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Gartenbau by 25th Century Games.
Gartenbau is a game in which you are going to be laying plant tiles, seedling tiles first, and then plant tiles on top of those, and then flowers on top of those. This is going to be a pattern matching game where you need to get your tiles in certain spaces to be able to play other tiles on top of them. All the while you will be moving around a rondel collecting resources so that you can do those actions. Some of my favorite mechanics are in this game. Let's take a look at how it works down below, and then we'll come back and share thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, here's Gartenbau on the table from 25th Century Games. Let me show you how this tile-laying tableau building game about being a gardener works. With this game, you are obviously going to have a board with a lot of different tiles. You have several different tiles of different shapes. Most of the tiles are going to be of this shape. However, you will have your plant tiles, which I know are kind of off screen here. You will also have two resources in this game. You've got sunshine, and the resources are kept in these really nice cardboard wheelbarrows. Then you also have water over here. So those are the two main resources you have in this game. And the board here is double-sided. I would flip it over for you to show you the other side. However, I've got all these tiles out here. This is the side for a 3 and 4 player game. On the back side is 2-player games. And so basically the difference is that there are going to be fewer spaces around this sunflower on a 2-player game. Otherwise, it's identical here. Now, for this game, everybody is going to be represented as a colored wheelbarrow, as you can see there on the far side of the board. And in between the different circle spots on the board, you're going to have a stack of these seedling tiles. And so these are seedling tiles, whereas these are plant tiles. And these over here are going to be your flower tiles. And it's important that you remember the difference between those, because essentially what you're going to be doing in this game is collecting seedling tiles by using your resources, and then using the seedling tiles to be able to play flower tiles on top of them, or excuse me, plant tiles on top of them. And then you will be playing your flower tiles on top of the plant tiles. It'll make more sense here in just a second. How a turn is going to work, starting with the first player, you will get to make a choice between one of two options. The first option is that you go to the next unoccupied stack of tiles. So for instance, if it's the white player who is the first player, they would move their token to this stack right here. Now, they could choose to pass over that stack and move to the next one if they give up one of their resources, placing it on top of that stack over there. And it can be either one of these resources. But otherwise, you would have to stop on that stack. And if you choose to stop on the stack, you are making a choice. You're either saying that you are going to take that tile and immediately place it into your tableau, or you are going to collect the resources that are printed in front of that stack. And as you can see, there are different resources for each stack. It's going to be some combination of sunlight and water. And so you might collect those resources because you need resources to be able to pay for these plants, which I'll show you here in just a second. But you can only have 10 resources at the end of your turn. You can have no more than 10 resources. So if I were to take this tile, essentially it's going to go in my tableau, which is just going to be in front of you. I'm not going to show you because I'm going to have to tilt the camera down and move stuff out of the way, but just pretend that my hand here is the tile, or is the table, and I would just be placing this in my area. Now, you do have a starter tile. Everyone will be dealt one of these, and these are double-sided. You'll choose which side you want to use, and every tile you place has to be adjacent to another tile that has already been placed. Now, you don't have to match icons here. In fact, you'll probably not want to do that. You'll probably want to be making arrangements that work for, I'm going to pan the camera down here a little bit so that you can see here these plant tiles. And ultimately, you are trying to match these different combinations in your tableau, arranging your tiles so that you're able to place one of these tiles on top of it. So for instance, if I wanted to try and plant this plant right here, I would need either 2 of those icons or 2 of those icons. And having an arrangement like this where I've got a red and a yellow, I could use that because this tile says it needs red and yellow or orange and orange. Now you place these on top of 2 separate tiles. It has to be 2 separate tiles like such. It could not be that, let's pretend both of these are orange for a second. You cannot do that. That's not allowed. It has to be over 2 separate tiles. And so that's the goal. That's what you're trying to do with all of these tiles. Now, I said you have one of 2 options. I'm going to pan this back up a little bit so you can see the board again. If instead I don't want one of these tiles, or I don't even want resources, you can move to the next open circle in front of where you're at in this rondel board here. And all the circles are the same. It doesn't matter which circle you go to, except for that's going to determine what the next stack is in front of you on your next turn. So I guess that does matter. But what you're doing when you move to a circle is that you are going to be, again, I'm going to pan this down, you are going to be purchasing one of these plant tiles, paying the resources at the bottom of the tile. And you would claim whichever one is on top of that stack. Now, I do want to point out that these stacks, they increase in value, which is quite different than most board games. Most board games, the value would decrease because you got here later than the other players. But the value increases in this game. And the reason for that is because you will be using these tiles once you have, let's say, 2 of them next to each other. You will be using these tiles to be able to place your plant or your flower tiles that have been dealt to you at the beginning of the game, and you'll be needing this arrangement right here to be able to play this. So this arrangement right here does not work for this, but let's just pretend that it did. Let's say I had a purple and a red. I could play this on top of these, and I would get the value right here printed on this side of the tile, which says 16 prestige, which prestige, or excuse me, that says 18. 18 prestige, which prestige is victory points in this game. Now, I will not get the victory points that are printed on these tiles here because I'm covering them up. And that's the reason why they're lower valued on the top, because you're racing to compete and get rid of these flower tiles out of your hand first. And so you will want to be covering up the lower valued ones so that you can later on in the game get down here to the much more valuable ones, because these will give you points if they aren't covered up by flowers. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And so that's the reason why the stacks are made the way they are. And that's essentially what you're doing on your turn. You are making a choice between, do I want to stop on a circle and get one of these plants, or do I want to get a seedling tile, which will help me get plants, or maybe I want to get resources, which will help me get plants. Now, I do want to come back up here a little bit and talk about the 2 different types of flower tiles in this game. So you do have 2 different stacks. I'm going to bring both of them on frame here. And so this stack over here, this is going to be the beginner's variant. And so you're going to have a hand of 5 different flower tiles, and you can tell the difference here because of this icon that's on the back of these. So this would make up one hand, whereas you can see that is a different icon there, and that would make up another player's hand. And so they would play with the 5 tiles that are in these hands, and they're all mostly the same. There might be a few variations, but they're mostly the same for all of the different players. Try that out when you are learning this game, but quickly graduate to this side over here. These are the more advanced tiles, and they are going to be wildly different, having different rules amongst all of them. But how you get these is much more interesting than just taking the 5 preset already dealt out to you. I'm going to show you the rule book here because the rule book shows you how you would do this. So you would have a 3x4 grid here, and these are stacks of 2. One showing you and the other is face down, so you can't see what the other one is in this stack. And you would take turns drafting these piles, and you would have a number of tiles in your hand at the end of all of this drafting process. And if you were playing a 3 or 4 player game, then you would get to discard one of the tiles that you ended up having in your hand at the end, because again, you don't know what's underneath this, and maybe it's a tile you really don't like. In a 2 player game, you would get to discard 2 tiles after doing the drafting. This is a much more interesting way to set the game up, and it allows there to be more strategy between the different players. Otherwise, you're kind of playing a similar game amongst all the other players. This is much more interesting. So that's that. And so the way the game comes to an end, once 4 of these stacks out here have been depleted, then the game will end and you'll count up points. Also, I do want to point out there are extra action spaces at the bottom of these, so that once they do empty, you can still land on this to be able to take this action. And so, for instance, this says receive 1 additional resource, your choice here. And this one over here says purchase a plant tile for 1 less resource now. So these are really nice actions that you get to do once the stack has been depleted. Once 4 of them have been depleted, though, you will go to in-game scoring, and how you'll score your points. You'll get your points for the flower tiles that you have been able to place out, going off of what are depicted on the different tiles, which are, again, wildly different if you're playing this expert variant. You will also receive points for the visible plant tiles that you have anywhere throughout your tableau. They have to be visible, though. They cannot be covered up. Then you'll also receive points if you did not use your 2 special tokens here. You've got 2 special tokens, a watering can and a flower pot. Now, both of these will give you 2 points at the end of the game if you don't use them. However, you can use them. What the watering can is going to allow you to do, it is going to allow you to rearrange some of the tiles that are in your garden. You'll be able to move them around. Otherwise, you will not be able to move them once they are placed in your garden. The flower pot will allow you to move to wherever you want in the rondel. Remember, I said in order to skip over these stacks, you have to pay a resource on top of each one. You could use your flowering pot to not do that. You can move to wherever you want. Also, on that note, if you do pick up a tile that has a resource on it, you do get to claim the resources that are on that tile. Otherwise, that's the game. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. And that is how you play Gartenbau. Let's head back up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Gartenbau from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, as I mentioned at the top of this video, you've got tile laying, you've got pattern matching going on in this game, and you have a rondel. Some of our favorite mechanics that you see in board games.
Yes.
What did you think about this one?
I love tiles, man. I love laying tiles down. I love matching tiles.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like tiles, so that was really good. It's a good game.
Good experience for this one then.
I did like that you aren't confined to a certain grid order or grid pattern. You and you don't even necessarily have to match any specific color. It's all going to depend on what your next goal is with the plant, to put that on top of it. And so there really is a lot of freedom in that. And some people might not like that. They want a little bit more structure. But I think for a non-gamer, it was nice and free-flowing for me. It's
a breath of fresh air, and I mean that in the sense of like I can breathe a sigh of relief, because I don't have to worry about fitting in this 7x7 or 5x5 grid or whatever it is. And it sort of just feels like, okay, I don't have to stress out about that. I can focus on matching these patterns.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing that this game doesn't have those restrictions on it, because at its heart, what I feel like it really is, it's a race game.
Yeah.
You're racing against the other players, trying to get those flowers out of your hand, because chances are if you don't get all of your flowers out, you're probably not going to win this game.
Yeah.
And so you do want to get them out quick, and you want to start gobbling up those other plant tiles, because those are worth bonus points.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to do this all quick. And so to not have to have the restrictions there, it's a sigh of relief for me anyway, playing this game, even as a gamer. So Now, I really like the rondelle mechanic in this game, moving around the center circle and, deciding whether I'm going to pick up a plant tile or a seedling tile. I get these confused.
Yeah.
Or if I'm going to cash in resources to buy a plant tile. I thought that was a really good choice there to make. What did you feel like that was?
Yeah, I did too. I really enjoyed the fact that it's easy to get resources. I feel like you're not wasting three moves just to get enough resources to buy one seedling.
Yeah.
And again, some people may think that it's too easy, but it just takes some of the maybe unnecessary stress off. You have your resources. You still have to plan it out and take time to get them, but you get enough resources. Almost every time you're going to have enough resources to buy what you want in a good way.
Yeah.
Without excess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I will agree with that. You're never more than 2 turns away from feeling like you can make something happen on a turn. And so usually it's 1 turn getting something to build up and then the next turn cashing in on it.
Yeah.
Which again, like Sam says, it may feel too easy for some people. You might want to feel like you're scratching and clawing a little bit more to get your points. But because it's a race game, you see everybody else is getting those points fast too.
I think if they had made it more difficult, either with the tiles or the resources or both, it just would have taken the focus somewhere else to the game.
Yeah.
Whereas, you are doing so many things with, drafting and tile laying and resource gathering and all that stuff, that there's enough going on that you don't need to make it more difficult just to make it more difficult.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's get to our pros and cons here with Gartenbau and talk about what works well with you being a non-gamer with this particular game. So what stood out in a good way?
And I think I've mentioned most of it. I think just the freedom to have the resources as you need, to put the tiles where you want them to go. I mean, you still have to have a strategy. You still have to have a plan for, okay, I'm putting these seedlings together so that I can get that plant, so that eventually I can put that flower on top of it. But it's not so difficult that it leads to frustration. I can do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I like that. You kind of just have a plan, and you make it work, and it keeps going. And at the end, it gets a little bit more, your heart's racing a little bit more as the other person's finishing theirs as well. But I thought it was a really good game for a non-gamer. I think it's great for a gamer, but it's easy enough for a non-gamer to feel like they can own this game. Yeah,
I will agree with that. It's a pretty game. I feel like it's a beautiful artwork with the colors, and I think they really pop out and stand out, and it has a wow aspect to it when you see it out on the table. Even though the gardening and plant theme, I feel, has really been done a lot here lately. I like it with this one. It keeps working for us, so I do like the theme. I felt like the plant tiles, the seedling, plant, and flower tiles being stacked on top of one another, it was really reminiscent of Acropolis, and that was a game that we both really enjoyed last year, made top 10 video for 2022, and this sort of had a similar feel to that, stacking the tiles on top of one another and getting those tiles in the right spots. I really enjoyed that mechanic, that pattern matching mechanic. So what didn't work for you so great with this game?
I think afterwards we determined that we would have preferred to play the more difficult level, where you're drafting the flower tiles.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do that. We just played the basic game, and we found that we both got our flowers out there. They both have the same set of points, so it's kind of a wash, because now you're just going off of the little bonuses that each tile offer.
Yeah.
And so I think next time we'll definitely play with the drafting option.
If you watch the rules portion of the video, I do cover it real briefly, but you are drafting those tiles in pairs, and you're only allowed to see the one on top. You're not allowed to see what's on the bottom. So there's a little bit of a mystery as to what you're drafting, which I absolutely think is clever. I really like that.
And we like drafting too.
And we do like drafting, yeah. And so you are getting a little bit of info about what you're taking and making a choice off of that, but then you're totally surprised by that other one. And I think that just really spices up the game, and it gives it enough variety to feel like I'm doing something completely different than what she's trying to do on her turn. Otherwise, when you play with those preset hands, it sort of feels like I just got to do this faster than you got to do what the same thing I'm trying to do. So,
and because you're not struggling for the resources and not struggling to make your grid, it just ends up being a wash.
Yeah. Now, one other con that I will have for this particular game, it does take up quite a bit of space because you do have that board in the middle, and it's an average size board, but when you have an average size board and you're each making your own area of putting the tiles together, that constantly gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Before you get to the end of the game, it's taking up quite a bit of space. And you are going to have to shift those tiles around so that you're not falling, they're not falling off the table. It's just a little cumbersome, and so you do want to make sure you have a lot of space when you are playing this game.
I do also feel like the icons on the plant cards, the seedlings that you need to cover it are just a little too small when they were over near Lance's part of the board, and so I'm having to look across the board to what seedlings, and you have 4 options. Or 2 different types of pairs, and I just felt like it was a little too small. I felt like if they could have made those icons slightly larger, it would be a little easier, but it's a little nitpicky.
All right, scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. Where does this one come in at for you?
I really enjoyed this game. It's probably been one of my favorites that we've played this year so far. I'd give it a 7.8.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoy it too. Well, let me rephrase that. I really enjoy it at the advanced variant for me personally, and I think Sam probably would agree with me on this. Unless you are like just really beginner or you just don't ever play board games at all, then maybe try it, or maybe with kids, definitely with kids. Try it at that beginner variant and then quickly move on to the advanced. Don't judge this game just based off the beginner variant. If you are even a moderately advanced board gamer, just go straight to the advanced variant. This game has a totally different experience at the advanced variant than it does the beginner variant. So judging just off the advanced variant, I'm going to give this game a 7.7. I really think it's a fantastic game. It's got a lot going on that I personally really enjoy. If I'm just going off the beginner variant, I think it would be like a 7.1. So that's the kind of jump here between the two. So, but as it is, Gartenbau is a fantastic game. Really recommend it. It's got it going on. It's from 25th Century Games. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.